Turn back now, plot spoilers ahead. In the new Resident Evil 2, one of the most intense bosses of all time can be found stalking you throughout the game like the Terminator. His name is Mr. X, the Tyrant, affectionately known as Trenchy, and he has one mission: to eliminate you. At times, he not only seems devastating and annoying, but somewhat magical. Lose him behind you, and seconds later he shows up right in front of you. Crash and burn him, chop him in half, or hit him with a rocket. He always comes back. But is it all the same guy? Let's take a look at Trenchy and some evidence that points to the fact that we may be dealing with multiple tyrants in Resident Evil 2 Remake. In the original Resident Evil 2, when Mr. X shows up, he is dropped into the Raccoon Police Department via helicopter. If you notice, there are 5 other tyrant cases flying as well. So, there are multiple Mr. X's. Video over. But wait 1 minute. The biggest Resident Evil fans know that the other 5 tyrants on that helicopter were not dropped at the RPD. Instead, they were transported to another location where they battled with mercenaries, and we know this because at the end of Resident Evil 3, Jill Valentine finds all 5 of their dead bodies. But with the remake comes possible changes to storyline, see Lisa Trevor in Resident Evil 1 Remake. So, perhaps in the reimagination, multiple Mr. X's were dropped. Let's watch Mr. X's updated arrival cutscene to find out. This cutscene, along with the previous helicopter crash, were omitted from the remake version. Possibly to make the game more mysterious for the player, I guess? So, we'll have to escape the Upside Down on our own and figure it out. Aside from the video game logic teleportation, which is probably just that, the strongest case for multiple Mr. X's starts with this scene during Claire's story. The Birkin G-monster completely cuts Mr. X in half. After that, Claire doesn't see the monster again. But, while playing the Leon story, Mr. X is back and better than ever. The surprise factor when the dead Mr. X appears alive is a great scare and mystery in Leon's second run, so it makes sense for it to be part of the story and not just an inconsistency.
Attention all citizens, due to the citywide outbreak, you are advised to take shelter at the Raccoon City Police Station.
Many people think multiple tyrants were dropped into the RPD. It makes sense since citizens were told to gather there by the police, and tyrants are trying to eliminate survivors. However, one Mr. X is powerful enough to clear one building alone. Plus, at some point, 2 Mr. X's would be bound to run into each other, and we would have seen it in that small space. So, perhaps instead, Umbrella dropped tyrants all over town in different locations to cover more ground. In that case, the RPD Mr. X might be different from the sewer Mr. X, which is different from the lab Mr. X. So when RPD X is killed by Birkin, Labs X is still 100% health and waiting for Leon. I've even examined the Labs X. There is no sign that he was cut in half. The Labs Mr. X could also be explained if Umbrella was monitoring the first Mr. X. Remember this thing in his head that appears to be a GPS chip? Perhaps when he died or stopped moving, Umbrella sent a second Mr. X to finish his work. Either way, it appears there are, in fact, more Mr. X's. But then I look at his hat. Why does only the first Mr. X have a hat? Did the rest lose their hats? Or is this the same guy? If there is actually just one tyrant, there is a final lame excuse, an issue with the story. While it appeared some storylines were cleared up in the remake, like who met Kendo, others remained. Which character met Marvin first? Why do Leon and Claire fight the same exact bosses in the same exact locations? Why do they both hear Annette's story? And in this case, is the same Mr. X dead to Claire but living to Leon? It's hard to imagine that a story point as important as Mr. X would be messed up, and it looks like multiple tyrants could really explain what's going down in Raccoon City. But until things are cleared up in future DLC or in Resident Evil 3 Remake, it appears it is a solid theory to think that multiple trenchies are stalking our main characters in Resident Evil 2 Remake. Crimson Army, do you think there are more tyrants than we know about lurking around in Resident Evil 2? Let me know your theories in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe!